Hello, I want to walk you through the instructions for the Introduction to Vectors activity. This is a quick activity for this week, and it's an introduction so that we can do a different, more interactive activity next week. So the first thing I want you to see is that when you draw vectors on our Google slide vector activities, which is what this is, I want you to make sure that you remember that all vectors need to have an arrow tip. So there's a tip on the end of the vector pointing in its direction. And for this activity, I want you to make sure that you weight the vectors to 3 pixels so that they look bolded, so that they're bigger, so we can see them clearly. And I'll walk you through what that means on the next slide. Okay, so on each slide, there's a grid background, and in the peach box, it gives you some instructions. So this one says, vector A is the vector 5, 3. Draw vector A in standard position and change the color to red. So I'm not going to draw 5, 3 because that's for you to do, but I'm going to draw a vector, let's see, I'm going to put a different one up here. I'm going to draw vector 2, 4. Okay? And just to give you an example on how to do this. So how do you draw a vector? You're going to click the arrow option. So right up here, you're going to click the arrow option. And then you're going to, it says put it in standard position, so I'm going to put my tail of my vector at the origin, and I'm going to draw the vector 2, 4. So I have to go over 2 and up 4. So there's my vector 2, 4. Now these instructions say change the color to red. So I'm going to go over right next to the arrow, and we're going to change the line color to red. And remember, I need to change the line weight to 3 pixels, so it's easy to see this vector. So that's much easier to see. So there's my vector. It's 2 in the x direction and 4 in the y direction, which makes my vector the 2, 4 vector here that I said. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide, and the next slide has a similar peach box with some instructions. So you're going to draw vector A again, and you're going to make it red, and then you're going to draw 2 other vectors. So now vector B is equivalent to vector A, but it's not in standard position. And remember, standard position means the tail is at the origin. And so if I want to draw a vector B not in standard position, I would just start it somewhere else. So I would draw my vector somewhere else, and then I could go back up, and I could change its color to blue, and I could change its pixel size to 3 because I have to have all my vectors at 3. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that vector because we don't need it, but you can see how we're drawing vectors now. Okay, okay, and then we go on to the next slide. And this slide gives you a vector, vector A, and you're going to type into these boxes what you think the answers are to each question. So number 1 says write vector A in component form. So we know that we're going to write some numbers, right, in our component form. So you can type right into these text boxes, and that's what we will be checking. So anywhere it says type here, you can type your answer in. And then the next slide has a different vector, similar questions. And then we go to slide 6, and we have a question about unit vectors. So it says to draw the 2 standard unit vectors, I and j. And remember that I is the vector 1, 0, and j is 0, 1. And then a reminder just to make them 3 pixels thick again. So you're going to draw the vectors using the arrow, and then you're going to change the thickness. Once you draw in a vector, you have the option to format it. Now, just so you know, if you draw a vector in, so let me just pretend, let me draw a vector in here. Ooh, I got to pick on the arrow. So I'm going to draw this vector. And when the vector is highlighted, I see the formatting, the change the line color and change the pixels. If I click off of it, those line formatting goes away. But if I click back on the vector, the formatting comes back. So you can get the formatting options back if you just click back on your vector. And then the last question is to draw another vector. Draw vector V, that's 5, 2. So you're going to draw that in, and then it asks you to draw in the unit vector. So you're going to show that vector V is the same as 5 of the I vectors plus 2 of the j vectors. Once you finish all the slides, all you have to do is submit on Google Classroom.